you know, Attorney General Schmitt, the Honorable Judge Williams, Lee Russell of True North, and then Jennifer Dockler of the Missouri Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence. Want to read it?
Okay, thank you all for being here today. I want to thank True North for being a part of such an important announcement today. The work that you do day in and day out to help those who've been victims of domestic and sexual assault is tremendously important to the victims as they begin their healing process to our state and to this local community, I know. Your Imagine a Safer Community, and we want to thank you for the work that you do and translate that sincere hope into reality. The most important aspect of my job as Attorney General is to ensure that every citizen of the state of Missouri receives the full protection afforded to us by the laws of our state and of our country against crimes of abuse, violence, and fraud. I take that responsibility very seriously. Of course, this includes those relating to crimes of sexual violence, a violation of the most personal nature against our most vulnerable fellow citizens. While the majority of sexual abuse cases go unreported due to fears of retaliation or harassment, there are some incredibly brave people who come forward to report sexual violence. Submitting a sexual assault kit for examination takes considerable courage, and it's critical and crucial to ensuring that the offenders are brought to justice out of the shadows and off the streets. Tragically, we now know that in our state there are currently thousands of untested sexual assault kits just waiting to be logged. These kits are not numbers. They are not footnotes to the reporting of a crime. They represent real human beings who have suffered and confronted their fears, reporting the sexual assault and submitting a kit that may now be sitting untested. They deserve more. Law enforcement works every day to make our state safe, our homes, on our streets, and in our communities. So when there's an opportunity to provide them with additional resources and help, we're going to do it. Today I'm pleased to announce the appointment of the Honorable Judge M. Keith Lee Williams to lead the Sexual Assault Kit Initiative for the Office of Attorney General. Judge Williams' job? Clear out the backlog of untested sexual assault kits in the state of Missouri. With more than 40 years of experience working with law enforcement as a trial judge and a treatment court administrator, Judge Williams is uniquely qualified for this very important job. She will start by developing a detailed inventory of the untested sexual assault kits, then lead the forensic DNA testing of the kits through an electronic tracking system. As a father, as a husband, as Attorney General, I can't thank you enough, Mickey, for agreeing to take on this important initiative. I am personally very grateful. With this data, we can more effectively fight and prosecute the offenders who have lurked in the shadows for too long. We can demonstrate through actions, not just words, that we support the victims in their quest for justice, and that we will not toss aside evidence. With this data, we will send a message loud and clear. If you commit a crime against any person in this state, we will use everything in our power to find you and bring you to justice. Thank you. Yep.
Great. Thank you all for coming. You know, the other day I was listening to a documentary on television. It was talking about the fictional Sherlock Holmes and the techniques that he used, and compared that to modern day science. The world truly, truly has changed. I've always had an interest in the proof of sexual assault using scientific evidence. When I was in law school in 1976, I did my final writing paper about the proof of the crime of rape using the latest techniques, which at that time was bite marks, because DNA was not part of our everyday conversation and certainly wasn't used in criminal courts of law. So it's really fascinating to me that here in the state of Missouri we want to make available to law enforcement every tool that they can to identify perpetrators of crime and to bring people to justice. But you know, before improvements can be made in a criminal justice system, first you have to acknowledge that there's a better way of doing business. Missouri now joins many states who have decided that untested sexual assault kits that are in evidence lockers or in storage rooms in hospitals simply is not the best practice. The commitment of the Attorney General and his staff has now been acknowledged by the support of the Bureau of Justice Assistance, who's given the state of Missouri a grant to help with this initiative. The grant funding will in fact provide some DNA testing. It also will pay for a tracking system, electronic tracking system that's now required by Missouri law. But the first thing we have to do is a detailed inventory, and that includes an inventory of more than 640 law enforcement agencies across the state of Missouri and 160 hospitals. And so there's much, much work to be done, and the most important thing is it has to be done in the next 6 months. So from my perspective, this initiative of the Attorney General, in fact, is a challenge. It also gives us an opportunity to help a lot of people. I appreciate your confidence in my management skills and allowing me to manage this project for you and in your behalf. I look forward to working with all the local sheriffs and police officers, with victims of crime as well as their advocates, with healthcare professionals, and you know what, it's going to take the efforts of individual citizens who are really interested in making this improvement in the state of Missouri. So there's a lot to do, and I guess at this point, but now the announcement's been made, it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work.
How much of this is covered by the grant, the federal grant that I think began under Josh Hawley?
Yeah, so this is entirely covered, this process will be entirely covered by that federal grant, which is a $2.8 million grant.
Have you hired staff, or is this the beginning?
So this is the announcement of Judge Williams today, and then we will be posting, I think, later today, opportunities for other folks to come on board with this team to help with the inventory process to begin with.
Is there an estimated timeline for how long the thousands of backlogged, untested rape kits will take to finally, be tested?
So the first piece of this, as Judge Williams pointed out, will be a 6-month time frame to make sure that we get an accurate inventory, and that'll give us the information we need to move forward. They will certainly then move forward with the database, the electronic tracking system, and then also the testing. And so this will be an ongoing process, but the good news is that we get to start today and with that inventory process, which is a very, very important first step.
Is this a newly established position that you created?
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's a newly established position made possible by the grant. And so as that grant comes through and those dollars are made available, we brought on Judge Williams, and she'll do a tremendous job. We'll also bring on additional staff to help in this effort.
Back in the end of November, CNN had an extensive investigative report on the Springfield Police Department destroying rape kits that went untested that were past the statute of limitations. Kind of what are your thoughts on departments, law enforcement agencies that may have been doing that in the past, and kind of how do we make sure that that does not happen?
Yeah, well, we want to make sure clear, and part of the reason why we're making this announcement today, and we'll be getting around the state, is to make sure law enforcement knows that we're here to help. We're going to work with them. We want to get an inventory. We want to get those tested. And so this is a very, very important step in that partnership that Judge Williams and her team will have with law enforcement across the state.
How large of the staff are y'all looking into hiring?
I'm sorry, what?
How large of the staff are y'all looking into hiring?
I think that's, Mickey, you want to handle that?
Yes, thanks. So the inventory itself will probably be conducted by 6 or 8 individuals who are part-time people, won't be a full-time, be kind of like a census taker. We'll have folks in different parts of the state of Missouri, in larger metropolitan areas, and then in the north and southeast and southwest, to be able to actually go to the individual agencies that need our help and assistance, or the hospitals that need our help and assistance.
Your Honor, now that we've been waiting, there's obviously more kits added to the backlog. How many are you estimating now, or do you know?
So let me tell you, there's not an estimate, other than the last one that I heard was more than 5,400. But here's what I do know. When that inventory was taken, or the suggested inventory was discovered, about 40% of the agencies actually responded to the survey, and about 40% of the hospitals actually responded to the survey. So we actually don't know what we're going to find when the inventory begins. This inventory will be very different. It's not just calling and saying, how many do you have? We'll actually be helping law enforcement and the hospital staff do a physical count, record the information, have it prepared to put in a database, so we will know precisely the location of each untested kit, and we'll know where to begin our task.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the new tracking system, when it'll be implemented, who will have access to it?
So let me tell you that the tracking system is part of a bill that went into effect in August. It suggests that a lot of different stakeholders should have access to it, including hospitals to enter first things, police departments, victims should be able to look up the status of their individual case. This is really an ongoing process. We haven't yet started the planning, but I suspect it's really going to take years, to be honest. It'll be a long time coming. First we have to bid, we have to get the details. There's a lot of extra work to do.
Other questions?
So is the state seeing a backlog of evidence in any other crimes, like drug crimes? It doesn't seem that that's been the case. Why this huge backlog of rape kits specifically?
Well, we certainly want to be helpful to the extent that we're aware of any other evidence backlog, but our focus today is clearly on the sexual assault kits, and there's been attention on it, and rightfully so. These victims deserve justice, and that's what we're here to begin that process with.
How did we get to this 5,400 number?
Well, if we even know that that's actually the number, right?
But
So,
I mean,
yeah.
how did these go ignored for so long?
I mean, I think part of our process in working with law enforcement is to better understand why we have a backlog in those conversations, because we really do want to work in a cooperative way. You know, the testing takes money, and that's part of this grant process too. But the most important thing is that it takes an incredible amount of courage for a victim to come forward and submit to this test. And they deserve to know answers, and the perpetrators of this will be brought to justice. And this is the first aspect of us, as was mentioned, you know, the 5,400 number, we think that's a number that's out there, but we don't really know. And so this initial 6-month period will give us a much clearer picture of what we're dealing with, and then planning from that.
Piggybacking off of what he was saying, do you believe that the state of Missouri has done a disservice to victims up until this point?
Well, my focus is making sure that we right any wrongs, and that we are very proactive in getting out there and getting across the state, finding out what we're dealing with, and prosecuting the people who committed these really, really heinous crimes.
Let's take one more question.
My question is, the role of the victims in all of this, they have to cooperate. Are you expecting a lot of cooperation from victims?
Well, I think one of the things that I think is important to note today, why we're here, and we'll be working with advocate groups. We have representatives here today to certainly help in that process. We want to be respectful of folks' privacy, but we certainly want to make sure that if there are prosecutions to make, those people are brought to justice.
I've been granted a follow-up in that. How much of this is a need, and will you address trauma-informed training for first responders, for people who actually work with those victims? Will that be addressed by this group?
So let me tell you, there's a multidisciplinary organization. We call it a working group that is combined with professionals from all of the arenas, law enforcement, the victims, advocacy groups, prosecutors, anyone who's involved in the system, to give us concepts and ideas and the best way to implement this particular grant. There's a lot of emphasis placed on for training and services to victims. And I'm hoping that that will be one of the things we can accomplish. But first, we have to do the inventory. I can tell you this, we have 25% of the grant funds that have now been released, but we have to earn the other 75%. And if we don't do the inventory, and if we don't do it within a 6-month period of time, then we won't have access to the other grant funding that's been promised to the state of Missouri. So first steps first. The inventory has to be complete. We'll be then able to assess where we stand and move forward. But yes, the victims' trauma-informed training will be extremely, extremely important, and I'm sure the working group will be looking at that. Thank you for asking the question.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you all for being here. Now we're going to get to work. So thank you.